All right, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Sorry, we're a little late. Um, we're going to do a roll call of everybody that's in attendance, I hope. Chuck there? Bill?
Here.
Jerry?
Here.
Damon?
Here.
Myself here, and Cindy, the director. Okay, we're all here. So I know this isn't going to be.
Excuse me, I think you need to introduce.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
I'm
Don't you
gonna
worry.
let him do it.
I was gonna wait. Alex Castro, Town Council.
Thank you, Alex.
My pleasure.
You weren't on my list.
That's okay.
So, I'm not opening this meeting today for comments or questions. The Board of Directors has not in the past had any experience with public audiences visiting our Council on Aging meetings. Since I joined the board in 2015, I have never seen a person in attendance. So this is entirely new for us, and it was new at our 2 June meetings. But beginning at our August meeting and moving forward, we will have established a protocol to follow that will be printed on the form with our agenda. And I appreciate your patience. I hope you today will just abide by my request. Thank you. So the first items on the agenda are to review and approve the minutes for June 21st and the 29th. So let's take the 21st first and take a few minutes to review them. And then we'll be looking for the vote to approve.
Point of order? Can I ask that the minutes be read out loud?
Would I entertain public comment at this time?
Can we be assured that we're being recorded?
We
In
are.
light of recent?
We are.
Oh, very good. And
Yeah, so we recorded to, so we understand what the minutes are.
They'll be read and would it be reviewed at this time?
Would somebody give me a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 21st meeting.
I second it.
We all say A, it's approval. I approve. And that's it. The meetings for the June 21st meeting are approved. Now we can move on to the June 29th minutes and do the same thing. Any discussion before we ask for a motion? Any discussion there?
No.
Okay,
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting on June 29th, 2021.
I second it.
and I approve it. So both meetings, these will all be going on public record. They'll be filed by Cindy, our director. Now, getting back to the agenda, we're going to do an election of officers. The first election would be for a vice chair. And I am going to nominate for vice chair, Bill. And I would like to know if, is there any discussion or comments on that?
I think first we should second it, so I'll second that nomination.
Oh, thank you, Lon. Now, is there any discussion or comments?
From what I know, Bill will do a good job.
All right,
Well, seeing the only other person here who's been there, done that, I second that too.
all right, so let's take a vote. Oh, Bill, will you accept the nomination?
I would be very happy to accept it.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. And I'll start with Chuck,
Yes.
and then Bill, you can vote for yourself. No? Okay, all right.
Yes,
Damon
Yes.
and Joyce Maturis, yes. Now, the next office that's open is for the secretary. And I'm going to nominate Damien.
Oh, thanks.
Is there any second on that, please?
I would second it.
Would you consider doing that?
I will accept the nomination, thank you.
Oh, thank you. So let's take a roll call vote on that. And again, it's Chuck
Yes.
and then Bill,
Yes.
Jerry,
yes,
Joyce, and if you want to say yes, you can.
Yes.
Okay. So, we have now filled the position for the vice chair and the secretary. On the booklet, the next thing that we will be looking at is the Elder Emergency Fund. We have existing information there, and this is what it looks like. And this is it's in your booklet, so if everybody wants to pull that up. It's the Town of Newbury policy and procedures that Cindy had filled out originally, so you want to take some minutes to look that over. That is the protocol that's here, but at our last meeting, there was some question about what if an emergency happens and our director at that point is called upon and cannot reach anybody and she has to make a decision. We're gonna bring that into discussion. I'm gonna have Cindy talk about her thoughts on that also once everybody's had a chance to review it. So, everybody looked it over, so we can bring it up, for Cindy to give an explanation, then we'll open it up for discussion.
So, the way I understand this policy prior to my arrival was, and I believe it's spelled out here too, that this is basically a last resort. So, entitling it an emergency fund is where that kind of comes into question, at least for me. Because if it's an emergency, then we're working to find other options, Pettingill House or whatever have you. How is this an emergency fund? That's my only question.
Okay, I can kind of answer that, because I was here when they started this, okay? It was a snowstorm in the middle of the night, she got a phone call from the police department, that somebody had run out of fuel, and could the Council on Aging help? Dick Joy was on the board at that time, just to give you a scope of how long ago this was, okay? And he said to her, help her, this is an emergency, in fact, I'll give you the money if you don't have it. That's how it got formed, and it was a true emergency.
Okay.
So how it transformed to a request for funds, I don't know, but that's what it was originally set up for. And that doesn't happen very often, I think maybe 3 times I've heard that since I've been here, but that's what it was originally for.
Okay. So I don't know if we wanna readdress how we have this set up
Yes.
in terms of saying that,
Does
Because
Cindy,
the language is in there about you having the authority to
For
freely give the $300, because that's what it was that night,
Yeah.
okay?
my other question would be though, in terms of an emergent, like, I'm not sure how that fuel assistance was handled, that, you know, filling someone's oil tank or whatever. Like, I don't have
She
access.
paid the vendor,
But how did she
the
just
town
say?
paid the vendor.
Right, was it just send me an invoice and I take care of it, cause there's no
Yeah.
like,
It was like, there's a snowstorm, the
Just go
lady's
ahead.
got no fuel. The town, we will guarantee it.
okay,
They filled it and then they got the bill.
I have one question about that. You're using the term the town paid for it. The emergency fund, as it's defined here, is 100% donation funded.
That's when it started.
Okay.
It was after that they
Okay.
started this fund to
I
get
just
money
want
into it, for
The
stuff like
audience to
that.
know that that's.
Okay.
so now going forward, it's me having access to this particular account, that's all donation funded. Yep, okay.
anybody else have any comments on this?
So we need to put some kind of language in here, I think, about,
Yeah, what
Go ahead, sorry.
constitutes a true emergency?
that's, was part of the discussion when we initially
Yeah.
brought this up, was what is an emergency?
And what is the account balance currently on the fund?
It's a little over $6,900.
And there's some significant questions on the fund request that might help define the severity of the so-called emergency. I mean, you're asking for monthly income, expenses. Does it make sense to use the emergency fund? Can the elder pay a portion of what the need is? What other resources can be utilized? So I'm just looking at the request document that's here. What prevents the elder from being able to pay this expense independently? And will this be a barrier in the future? What steps will be taken to resolve this barrier? So, it sort of adds some teeth into defining what this person's emergency is, I think. But I think it's far from a call in the middle of the night saying I need $300, period.
But what if that does happen, and,
Well, I'm not saying it's not possible.
Well, the
but
thing
I'm
is,
saying-
there's a clause right here that says she has discretion to write a $300 check.
right,
You know, which would cover, I think, any emergency.
But
If there was a fire and you had to put them up someplace, that would even cover that.
but we only go to the point of 300.
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
in an
no, I'm
emergency,
just
before we get
clarifying.
into what he's saying,
Yeah.
to dwindle down and figure out what the actual emergency is, and can we find another source for this person to utilize?
once they're been in the hotel, then we look for the other sources. But meanwhile, how much are we guaranteeing at the hotel?
It said $300
Yeah,
here.
300,
Up to 300.
after 300. Do you have a problem with that, Cindy? No. Okay.
I think he does, I think he wants to.
No, I don't have a problem.
No, but I think that these questions are the day after questions, instead of that moment in time.
There's the follow-on questions to
Yeah.
make sure that
That
this
it's
will
a
not be a
legitimate
problem in the
request.
future. It's the last question, will this be a barrier in the future? Let's take steps to be taken to resolve it. So I think it, you know, it's not a slush fund. It's not for continuous activity, and it's to help someone on an emergency basis. I think it does. Cindy can do up to $300, and if there's a request that's up to $500, then it comes to members of the board of directors to authorize that. But the initial select of $300 is
At her discretion.
she's
So then can we take number 3 where it says if outside funding sources cannot be secured and the problem can be resolved with a one-time application, can we take that out if outside funding sources cannot be secured? Because if I'm allowed to do that $300 initially, I think our wording needs to change there.
Well, it looks. I mean, it almost looks like the second part of this document is aimed for something that would be more along the lines of ongoing help as opposed to an emergency. I don't know, you know, an initial emergency, running out of heating oil or a fire or something like that. Do we want to separate these two things entirely, even if they both draw on the same fund? I don't know if there's any legal need to do that, but
May I?
You may.
It seems like this is written for one specific person. What if there are many people and they say $300? Many years in the fire department, I've run into things like this, from floods, from storms, from hurricanes, so I think that needs to be ironed out. And then the simple words down at the very end that will stop all abuse of the funds, I guess I'm going to say, is at the discretion of the director. You concur?
well, I mean, there's that was part of why I asked about how much was in the account to begin with, because you don't want to essentially give it all in one day and then
Yeah.
have it needed the next day, but nor do you want to deny people
Okay.
support.
I mean, I'm all for helping.
Yeah.
Believe me.
So, you know, if we find out that the fund is dropped down to $200 by one emergency, I think it then becomes incumbent on us to do some fundraising and get it back up.
We can't make more than a $500 payment, and it only can be a one-time payment.
Yeah.
So, and then anything over that, you have to bring it to the board of directors. So, I don't think there would be a problem with this disappearing unless there were so many of them. And not all, they would have to be an unforeseeable emergency when there's no help provided for Cindy to get some counseling from the board. So I'm not really concerned about the overall writing of this.
I mean, I think it still could be documented. I think it could be focused a little bit more for an emergency. For
It has to be,
For
right.
example, step number 2, if someone called and said, I have a fire, I need to go to a hotel, Cindy's not gonna be able to contact any of these A through F sources of funds to see if they can help.
No, but the Red Cross is the first person that's there anyway.
Well, if it's an emergency, I'm just saying perhaps Cindy could just do it, okay, if it's an emergency.
Up to 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the whole, I would say yes. And there's another thing, about this fund that I don't know if we've ever resolved. How do we designate the donations and what do we put into this fund?
So let me just see if I look back. I went through and found some donations and they just, gift is written on the memo or donation. It doesn't specifically say.
It might be a mark for anything.
It's just made out to the Newbury Council on Aging. That being said, one has someone's name in here. I'm almost wondering if maybe it was like in an obituary, please donate to the Newbury Council on Aging Elder Emergency. Maybe it was designated like that and just never written on the actual check.
Yeah,
So I don't know how the previous director was allocating the funds. And this is from a while, this is from 2015. So I'm not sure how she was earmarking them to this specific fund. Unless we do, we do some kind of drive, maybe the Friends could say, can we raise money for the Elder Emergency Fund? But other than that, when funds come in as a donation to the Council on Aging, they go into our gifts and donations fund.
at some
So-
point, if that was, getting low on the other one, could you ask our permission, could you have these funds to transfer money to there?
I can find out about that. I
Yeah.
don't know if I have the ability to do that. Transfer it from the gifts and donations.
To, the emergency fund. Cause most people probably don't even know about this emergency fund and they wouldn't, even write it down in the memo on a check.
Right.
Unless we put it in our newsletter.
It's a thought.
That-
I can double check and make sure we can do that.
Yeah, and you could ask, you could explain about, well,
What it
right
is.
now it has sufficient money, but you could mention that is, we're accepting donations for the emergency fund. Or maybe the Friends, like you said, cause we don't raise money, they do.
If I may, Joyce.
So it just does, between the board, this is just discussion.
Okay. Cindy, were you looking for changes because 2 and 3 procedurally don't quite make sense given the emergency nature of the requests? And so I guess the question becomes, do we as a board want to take 2 and 3 out, or do we want to essentially create an understanding that we know that these will not happen during an emergency, but that they will be part of the process thereafter? So she's seeking clarification, I think, on how to operate, as I understand it, and I don't know which is better, to strike things out or to change the language a little, or to simply say we know that this will be a later part of the process and we just have it included in the document.
This to me is a request for funds. This has nothing to do with an emergency.
Mhm.
This is a request for funds. I got low on how am I gonna pay my mortgage this month? Who can I call? Who can I ask? It's not, I would just take the word emergency off of this and keep this as a procedure for request for funds. And just do one separate piece of paper for emergency funds, saying that you have the authority to spend up to $300 for our emergency. And then revert to this request for funds piece.
The only question I have about that is that can the request for funds then draw on the elder emergency fund? Is that the right place for that money to be coming from, or are we? Yeah, that's,
I understand what you're saying, but this to me is just a policy requesting money. It could be anybody.
I
Yeah.
definitely think that makes sense. but I think Cindy wants clarification for how she's supposed to operate, so I think, well, how about this, I'll write out a motion. What is your title exactly? Director. So, I move that the Director of the Council on Aging be authorized to spend up to $300 from the emergency fund upon request of a senior in town.
I second that.
And that gives her the authorization, and then this can revise this later to make it more what you were saying, of a
Just a
request
request
for funds.
Okay, let's take Cindy, how does that sound to you? Good?
Bill, you look like you have a question.
No, I think that's great.
All right, so we'll take a vote on the motion that was just read. And it was seconded
Do a second.
by, we had a second by Jerry.
Second.
Okay, so we'll do the vote. And we'll start with Chuck,
Yes.
and then Bill,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
myself, yes, and
Yes.
yes, so the motion passes. And now we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the review of the Council on Aging mission statement. We're looking to approve the statement. We have that, well, we don't have to approve it today if we want to take it under advisement. But we have ours here in writing, and then we have another statement that most of the towns are using. So if we could just review them and see if our existing one, our mission statement that we presently have, suits us, or would you want, Jerry took this one here, which he says is the actual.
This comes pretty much from if you go on the website for Council on Aging in the United States. This is pretty much word for word. I think I took out 3 lines because it was a little longer, but that's pretty much, and then I checked Newburyport, Amesbury, and there's just 1 or 2 words different, but it's pretty encompassing. It says what it's supposed to.
Let's have some discussion on this, please. What are your thoughts? I would say they're pretty much the same. And I think I like the one that better is the one that was given to us by Jerry, but either one would work.
Cindy, what do you think?
So the reason why I had brought this up was I was taking a course, and part of the course talked about mission statement and vision statement and whatnot. And the instructor said, how many of you can recite your mission statement? And I know what our mission is, but to
Yeah.
recite this statement word for word was difficult for me. Then she asked, can your board recite it word for word? So one of the examples she gave us was Duxbury, and I have a copy of this for each of you. To empower older adults to age well, engage in the community, and enrich their lives. Which is very simple and to the point, and encompasses everything that is here without being so specific, you know.
But this isn't long, this is 3 lines.
Right.
It isn't a paragraph.
No, it's not, I agree. But this just seems more broad and kind of all
Can we see
encompassing, of
the
course,
next
if you want to take one and pass it down, it's a copy for each of you. But if you're more comfortable with leaving it as specific as this, that's
Well,
great.
this was almost word for word what this is, which is almost word for word
A lot
the
of them,
national.
a lot of councils on aging have something
Yeah,
very similar to
so-
that, yep.
Well, one of the things that I liked from the original one was the questions relating to aging, which is going the opposite direction of what you're talking about, of sort of shortening and keeping it very broad and direct, but I like that from the first one.
And that's inclusive of everybody, it's
Yeah.
not just this one population, so I agree, I like that part of it too.
Might I suggest that we sit with this for a little bit?
That's what I
Take
had
the next
intended.
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's bring it back on the agenda, and we'll probably have some time to ponder it, and then we'll make a decision.
Just as a help, I actually Googled mission statements for council on aging from
Yeah.
8 or 9 different places. And just food for thought, you can look at them as we discuss this offline perhaps and come up with a consensus. I like the one from Southern California. Promoting the independence, health, and dignity of older adults through compassion, education, and advocacy. Very short, very broad, and the things that Damon picked up on and what we have today, my former occupation, those would be more of vision goals.
trees, okay.
It would be more vision goals of the organization. More specific as goals.
Yes, I mean,
I'm
vision
seeing this
statement
one that
and
I buried in
mission
Oh,
statement, there's so many
I
different
have the
definitions
agenda.
of all
Yeah,
that.
the agenda.
Oh.
Thanks.
The mission statement from Southern California requests eyeglasses, too. I don't know if anybody saw it, it's all
Well,
faded.
I was gonna apply for an emergency loan, my
Yeah.
my printer,
Printer donors a little no.
All right, so that'll be on the agenda for next month, and I really don't think we have to vote on that, so just move it, we'll table it for now and bring it back. Now, review of the aging expenses and donations since last meeting, which is Cindy.
So for donations, we received a total of $59. 3 donations came from a woman who took a van ride to grocery shopping. It was in that sheet with a donation every time. A gentleman had picked up a vaccine card sleeve. He gave us a donation. We came for that. A woman had done that as well. And then we received something, just a card in the mail with a donation. So just to review that process, when I get a donation, because we have had, this generally has come in because of donations to the Friends. But when I receive a donation, I fill out a form, I have to go to town hall, I give everything, in triplicate to pass it over to the treasurer's office, and then they cash the checks and whatever, and they go into the appropriate account that I've designated. I know that we've had a couple of calls come when, maybe 2 newsletters ago, the Friends had put in their annual letter requesting funds. I let the Friends president know when donations came in. She would come maybe once a week or so to come pick things up, and then from there, however long it takes her to process the check with the bank, I don't know, but I just want, there to be an understanding that it's not as soon as you send the check in, it gets cashed like today. So there's a little bit of a process. And again, with the Friends, that's out of my hands when they're passing those things over to the bank. But I do know that there's a delay in terms of her collecting the checks from me and then submitting them to the bank. So there's a little delay, but we very much appreciate every donation that we receive. I'm working on the August-September newsletter. I hope to send that to the printer this week to get it out at the end of next week. We have a grab-and-go meal scheduled for this Wednesday. We've ordered generally we order 40 meals. So again, I've ordered 40. Right now I have maybe 26 meals that are reserved, so we do have a lot left over. We'll make a few phone calls to people that are generally on that list every month, but on Wednesday we can always say to people, would you like an extra one? Just so you guys know, these are meals through offered by Elder Services in Merrimack Valley and North Shore. So it was in lieu of them doing their traveling chef, where they would go council on aging to council on aging and do a meal. Now they package everything and they give it to us to take and go. So it's initially because of COVID. I do have this scheduled through September.
What is it for Wednesday?
It's hot dog, corn on the cob, potato salad, and a red, white, and blue parfait with strawberries and blueberries, yeah.
Put your name in.
Wanna go to lunch?
So that is for this one, and then the August meal is scheduled for August 18th, and then I know I have a date in September, and I haven't received any word if they're going to continue it after that, or what their plan is gonna be. So I'm hoping they continue it because it's a lot of people really like it, and they can take it, and some people don't need it that day, they save it and have it the next day, but whatever works for them. So it's kind of a nice option for people. I'm hoping that it will continue. For programs, right now, we are gearing up to have more in-person programs. So right now, we just finished in June a yoga class. Right now we have a senior stretch and strength class, so that was today. Second week in a row it had to be held inside at the field house because of the weather. But I'm hoping, the next 2, maybe she can get outside. We do have canopies that I bought using funds from a grant from Elder Services. But we have the use of the field house, which is a great option. My plan is to continue offering exercise programs over there, whether it be outside when it's nice weather with the canopies, inside in the event of inclement weather. And then that, I actually went to the recreation committee meeting. That will have to stop likely around Thanksgiving, simply because of having to plow that parking lot just for us to do a exercise class there, or heating the building, that kind of a thing. So then I will talk with the library about maybe switching over to using one of their rooms, or if we need to bring it back into the council on aging, depending on what we come up with other programs. But I want to be able to offer multiple things, so we may be in multiple locations at one time. So for a little bit longer, Mantor Fields and the field house is gonna work. In the newsletter that we'll be sending out, we have multiple programs that we are working on. Yoga will be back in August, again over at Mantor Fields for now. We have a social worker coming from Brigham Health and Rehab of Newburyport. She's just gonna do a quick discussion about advantages and disadvantages of home care, assisted living, skilled nursing, that kind of a thing. Just a quick brief, sort of little bit of facts. They're gonna bring some snacks, and then the social worker is available one-on-one if people have specific questions.
Is that gonna be taped?
I can talk to Ethan about having it taped and then putting it on cable.
I think that's a good idea.
Good point.
Having been there, needed all these questions answered, I know.
So I'm working with them, that group. They're actually one of the advertisers in our newsletter, so we're trying to reach out to advertisers of our newsletter to offer different programs. They have lots to offer and things to share, so Talking to people about how Medicare works when you need to go to a skilled nursing facility. People don't understand all of the little details with that, so that was another program that we had talked to them about offering. So again, they wanna do these in very quick, they're not gonna come and talk at people for an hour. It's a quick synopsis, and then if you need, specific questions that answered, we're happy to sit there and
Sounds like a great thing. If you watch TV at all you see are these ads on there, Medicare this, Medicare that,
Right.
It is a tad confusing.
It's very confusing,
Yep.
and it's
Oh.
very different how Medicare works in a skilled nursing facility versus how it works in a hospital versus how it works in home care and whatnot. So that's one of the programs that we're offering. Bill Duke is a watercolor instructor. He's coming back. He was just with us in June. He'll be back in August and September. The Greater Newburyport Village, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but I'm not super familiar with it, so I'm looking forward to the presentation. But Janet, our outreach coordinator, utilizes them a lot. It's kind of like they're almost like, it's a group that you would join, and then they can help you with anything from, do you need a ride to a doctor's appointment? Do you need someone who...
Is it like the job bank?
I think so.
Okay.
They are just kind of, again, I want to be part of this. I want to attend the presentation to learn more about it, but Janet will often refer people to that if they call and say, hey, I need someone to help me with my, clearing out my gutters or whatever. I think they're a great resource for people. But I believe you have to join it as a member, and then I think they have like an online community. So two gentlemen are gonna come and just give a presentation about what this program is, and if it's helpful to people, great. If it's not, that's okay. That might be another one we wanna record. I can look into that. Birthday bingo is back. That will start in August. So birthday bingo, there was a contingent of people who came every month for a bingo game, maybe 10 or 12 people. I spoke to the woman who used to call bingo. She is unavailable right now, probably till about October, but we got a volunteer to help us in August and then another one to help us in September. And then if this particular woman is not available in October, we'll continue to reach out to volunteers to try and keep that going. So cupcakes, ice cream, coffee, tea, whatever, and then a bingo game, or several bingo games. I am working so I've rented Peter Hall for 2 luncheons, one in August and one in September. We received grant from the Newburyport Society for the Relief of Aged Women for COVID relief. So I used that COVID relief as socialization for people and a meal. So I've rented Peter Hall. The August caterer is Carry Out Cafe. And then September is Starboard Galley, excuse me. So I've booked both of those dates. I've booked the caterers, and then we're just working on getting volunteers to help us out in terms of plating the food, serving the food, being there to refill coffee, water, things like that.
What are the dates?
Tuesday, August 17th. And Tuesday, September 14th. So these will be in the newsletter. I'm limiting it to 40 spots, and there was a couple of reasons for that. Number 1 was cost. Number 2 was trying to envision the layout of tables to servers to staff and whatnot, trying to make sure that we'd be able to accommodate everybody and want everybody to eat
11
at
to
the same
1 or
time.
something like that,
What's that?
like 11 to 1 or something like that.
Well, I just figured if we had 10 tables of 4 and we had 1 or 2 volunteers, or one or 2 tables per volunteer, I want everyone to be eating at the same time. And we're gonna be serving everybody. I don't want, it's not gonna be a buffet style where people are gonna have to carry their plate or whatever. So we wanted to try and serve everybody. And this is our first foray back into this. And I believe the luncheons used to be held at the Council on Aging. It was maybe 3 tables or so of people in a much smaller, easier to handle space, but we're trying to offer it to as many people as possible. So it's the first one. We'll see how this one goes. Hopefully the second one will go a little bit better, and then we'll see what we do going forward.
Is there a donation? The ones that were held at the hall, at the actual, school, they used to get a $3 donation for the meal, or?
So I wasn't gonna do that for this one, simply because,
That's
just
the
like the
fun.
other program, we had funding
Oh,
available, and,
yeah,
and it's more about
Got it.
encouraging people to
People
come
to
out and
come.
socialize, and,
great,
you know, we want them to enjoy a meal, you know, that's, the funding is there, I'd like to use it and offer them something nice. And I went with those two vendors, one was actually recommended by Peter Hall, the other one you had recommended. Because I wanted to go with a nice offering. I didn't want it to be something cheap and quick, I wanted it to be a nice offering for people.
that sounds great.
So that's the luncheons. Our van driver, Jim, is always, so Jim Long is our van driver. He started maybe 6 months ago or so he's still relatively new to us, but he is always trying to think of ideas and things for us to do. So he suggested a trip to Al's Seafood up in Northampton. So on August 19th, we will have 10 spots available on the van. So the van will be leaving Newbury around 11, go up to Al's Seafood, people can order their lunch, and then he'll take them for a little scenic ride and then bring them back. So that's on August 19th. We're doing another one of those in September, on September 23rd. So we're gonna do brunch at the Ipswich Inn. So again, go over, people can get their brunch, and then he'll take them for a little ride along Great Neck in Ipswich.
If you ever can't fill a spot, call me.
I'll let you know.
Thank you.
He's actually already told a couple of people that have gone to grocery shopping with him, and they're looking forward to it. So I think once this goes out in the newsletter,
Right, I don't wanna take away from other people, but.
it'll generate a lot.
I do. Sure.
Wednesday, September 1st, I'm working with Karen Tyler, Veteran Service Office, to, she's going to do a seminar on veterans benefits. That's at 10 a.m. I am working with the Cultural Council and Delvina Theater. I spoke with the woman from Delvina. She had told me there were 2 different programs that had been approved for grants from the Cultural Council. One was actually from 2020 and one was from 2021. The 2021 obviously couldn't happen because of COVID. And the program that they were offering, that they got the grant for, the actor in that play got another job and he's unable to do this particular performance. So she was just going to insert a different play. And I just need her to check with the Cultural Council to make sure it's okay for them to insert a different play based on the grant that they received. I don't know if it'll be a problem or not, but I'm waiting for confirmation. But if that's good, Thursday, September 9th, will be a play called 13 Things About Ed Carpellotti. Luncheon, Constituent Services, Mary Ann Ney from Senator Bruce Tarr's office gave me a date in September 16th for an hour, but she'll be at the council and she'll be able to answer questions for people. I believe she's going to do that on a monthly basis, but I will verify that with her and then that will be in the newsletter moving forward. Watercolor class again in September. I booked Gordon College Center for Balance, Mobility and Wellness. They had done a program in the past, I don't know if you remember.
We do, yes.
So they had done it at the library. I actually have to just double check with Jean Ackley over at the library to make sure I can use her room at this time. But it's a very similar balance and fall prevention seminar. So we're starting with this to kind of give an overview, and then we will work with Gordon to have therapists, 2 therapists or 1 therapist would come to the Council on Aging on a monthly basis, and we can book, 2 or 3 or 4 people to come in to actually do a balance assessment with them. So that will be forthcoming, but at least the seminar gets the ball rolling. And those are the in-person programs. The other thing I put in the newsletter that's nothing that the Council on Aging did, but I wanted to get the word out, is the Moving Wall exhibit is coming to Newbury in September. That will be set up at Mantor Fields at Central Street. So it's half-size replica of the Vietnam Wall. So that's gonna be set up September 2nd to the 6th. So I put it in here just so people would know that that's coming. And there's no registration or tickets or anything required. People can just stop by and view it, and but I wanted people to know that that's coming.
That's very nice.
That's as far as in-person programs. Virtual programs, I'm still continuing to offer things on cable access, Channel 9. right now what I've done is gathered several programs through Mass Access. There's all kinds of recordings on there that we have access to. I've just picked out some educational programs, some exercise programs, some entertainment, and I'm gonna pass that over to Ethan, and he will make sure it gets up on Channel 9. So I didn't have room, funny enough, in the newsletter to list out specifically what was being offered, but I have a little corner that says virtual programs and what times to check it out on Channel 9, so that people know that they can find things there. The take-home activity kits are still, those were very popular, and I'd like to continue to offer those. So I went over to the bird supply place today, but they were closed on Mondays, so I will head there tomorrow. I did order some window bird feeders, just little suction cups, stick them to your window, and some bird seeds, so we'll put those together. The Book of Me was a big popular item from the last time we did this, so I ordered more of those. And I just went to Stonewall Kitchen today and got some blueberry muffin mix, and I've ordered a mixing spoon and some muffin tins. So we put these little kits together for people to take home to do things. Because they couldn't come in and do things, we wanted to offer them something fun to do at home. Again, that was through grant funds from Elder Services, which is dwindling quickly, but I'd still like to be able to offer things for people because not everybody can or wants to come in. Sometimes we have a volunteer bring things to people at home, or a friend or family member picks it up because they can't come in. So we just want to be able to offer things for people at home too. NEAT program, I just want to touch base on transportation. So the van is up and running. Obviously, we know every Tuesday we're doing grocery shopping. Right now we have 2 to 3 steady people going. Hopefully the word will get out that more people will join us. We did 3 rides, I think, 4 rides in June. 2 were for grocery shopping and 2 were for taking someone to a salon appointment. But the van will be every week on Tuesdays, and then with the addition of these kind of things where we're going on a restaurant trip, hopefully we'll do those monthly, if not more often. And NEAT drivers, we have 24 NEAT drivers, so it's a volunteer program, yeah. It's awesome. So they're not just from Newbury, they're from neighboring communities as well. We have a driver from Georgetown, a couple from Newburyport. The issue is it's a volunteer program. So someone takes a ride and then something comes up for them. I had a gentleman who was going to take someone to Boston for an appointment, and he had a family emergency. He had to cancel the ride. So unfortunately we couldn't find another ride for that person. But that's unfortunately the nature of the beast in terms of it being a volunteer program. So it's there. We obviously have the van for local things, but the van's not driving into Boston for medical appointments. But we did do 8 NEAT rides in June, so it's there, it's available. We put it in our newsletter every month. We let people know that NEAT is always looking for drivers, so if people are interested in helping, they can volunteer for NEAT. Or if you need a ride, call us and we can work to get it set up. So that's transportation. And then the last thing is we're still working on filling the program coordinator position, so hopefully I'll have news on that soon.
Very
I think
good.
it's the help.
That you sure do. You're doing a fabulous job. Thank you, Cindy.
And the other thing, I'll just pass this out just so you guys, there's a copy of the expenditure report for each of you, and this is for the last fiscal year, so that's complete. Any questions about, yeah?
No, but Joyce, it was your business, I wanted to ask her,
You can use the
because
other business.
because we're now have an audience, and I appreciate that very much. Prior to this meeting, I asked Cindy if she could do a little demographic for the people who come to the meeting about who the seniors are, how many of them are, are they working or not? So when we talk about these things, we know the population that we're dealing with. And she agreed to do that for the next meeting. And if you have any other questions about it, then you can just direct them to her. Like, there are 2,424 seniors in the town of Newbury, in case anybody wants to know.
And that starts at age
60.
60.
60.
We're proud of that.
Yeah, we're all around with that.
Yeah. Same here? Any other in?
So I have one other item on the agenda that I want to go over. It's under other business and it's about our bylaws. This here was sent to us by the town clerk. And what's enclosed is the approval from the Attorney General's office. And I also gave everybody another set of bylaws. But what I'm finding is I really think the bylaws are going to be on the agenda at some point. They were done in 2002, and I think we should review them and see if we need to add any additions. So you can just look this over and keep it handy, so you can bring it to the meeting when you see it on the agenda. And with that, any questions on that, any discussion?
Do you know when you wanna discuss it? Is it at the next meeting or?
No, not necessarily the next meeting. I want to finish up the mission and I want to talk to Cindy about our vision. And then the next thing will be the bylaws. So maybe September.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Well, then I would make a motion to adjourn, I guess.
Yes, but I want to set the next meeting. The next meeting is, I have everything written down, but I have so many papers I'm looking at. Well, I'll look for it right here. August 17th.
17th?
16th, I'm sorry, August.
Monday, right?
Monday, August 16th.
So I'm actually out of town on the 16th, I'm coming back that evening.
Okay, well, why don't we move it then to the 23rd? It's not written in stone and you're certainly a very important factor at our meeting, so we'll make it the 23rd of August. If everybody else is fine with that.
Fine with me.
So you can did you make the motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, I second it, and we're gonna take, let's just do a yay. I approve.
Me too.
I approve.
Yep.
Thank you,
Thank you all for coming.
thank you. It's a pleasure to see you all.
Thank you.